This video is brought to you by Brilliant. On Saturday evening, Serbia and Kosovo agreed to the implementation annex of the agreement on the path to normalisation. While this might sound like a meaningless bit of bureaucratic legalese, the implementation annex was the last hurdle for a normalisation agreement between two countries that haven't really got on well in the past. So in this video, we'll take a look at the agreement itself, why it's gone down so badly in parts of Serbia, and whether it stands a chance of actually succeeding. So let's start with a bit of context. Relations between Serbia and Kosovo have been tense since Kosovo declared independence in 2008, and Serbia doesn't recognise Kosovo as an independent state. The two countries were both part of Yugoslavia until the 90s, when an economic downturn and the rise of Serbian nationalist Slobodan Milosevic triggered its breakup. During the Kosovo War in the late 90s, NATO ended up intervening decisively in favour of Kosovan separatists, despite never receiving authorisation from the UN, and Milosevic eventually agreed to withdraw all federal forces from Kosovo. The war ended with Kosovo being placed under UN supervision, and in February 2008, Kosovo unilaterally declared independence from Serbia. The declaration was illegal under Serbian law, but it was approved by the International Court of Justice, and the Republic of Kosovo was subsequently recognised by a majority of European Union countries and the United States. Since then, relations have been about as tense as you'd expect. While it might have de facto autonomy, Serbia doesn't recognise Kosovo as an actual state, and ethnic Serbs living in Kosovo, who represent about 8% of the Kosovo population, and for the most part don't recognise Kosovo as a sovereign state, regularly protest efforts by Kosovan authorities to assert their jurisdiction in the region. To improve things, since 2008, the EU has been trying to facilitate negotiations between both sides. The intensity of negotiations increased last year after tensions flared when Kosovo authorities tried to implement a law requiring ethnic Serbs living in Kosovo to use Kosovan licence plates instead of Serbian ones. While most people were pretty pessimistic about the negotiations, last month the EU's foreign policy chief Josep Borrell announced that they had agreed on an agreement on the path to normalisation of relations. The agreement itself isn't long at all, so give it a read if you're interested, but it basically said that Serbia would do two things. First, Article 1 says that both parties shall mutually recognise their respective documents and national symbols, including passports, diplomas, licence plates and customs stamps. In practice, this seems like a concession from Serbia to Kosovo, and it strongly implies that Serbs living in Kosovo will have to accept Kosovo dictates on licence plates. Second, the document seems to suggest that Serbia will, at least implicitly, recognise Kosovo. Article 4 states that Serbia will agree to let Kosovo join international organisations, and Article 5 states that both countries will agree to let the other apply to the EU. In practice, this seems to amount to an implicit recognition of Kosovo's sovereignty. After all, if Serbia lets Kosovo join the UN, then, well, that looks a lot like recognising its statehood. In return, Kosovo agrees to, quote, ensure an appropriate level of self-management for the Serbian community in Kosovo, as required by Article 7. Now, what exactly this appropriate level of self-management would look like was yet to be determined. When the agreement was first announced, Borrell told reporters that an implementation annex would need to be negotiated to sort out the specifics, and this implementation annex was finally announced on Saturday evening. According to the annex, this appropriate level of self-management will have to be consistent with relevant previous dialogue agreements as determined by the EU facilitator. In practice, this seems to imply that Kosovo will have to set up a community of Serb municipalities, which would create a semi-autonomous association of the 10 Serb-majority municipalities in Kosovo, with control over certain policy areas, including economic development, education, health, urban and rural planning. Kosovo actually agreed to the idea way back in 2013 as part of the Brussels Agreement, which was another EU-brokered agreement between Serbia and Kosovo, which actually looked very similar to the current agreement. But Kosovo pulled out of its implementation in 2015. Kosovo pulled out for a variety of reasons, but one of the big ones was that certain Kosovo politicians became worried that the community of Serb municipalities would end up threatening the functioning of the Kosovan state, in much the same way that the Republika Srpska had done in Bosnia. Anyway, this is what the implementation annex seems to be alluding to when it talks about relevant previous dialogue agreements. It's basically telling the Kosovans that they have to follow through on the 2013 Brussels Agreement and establish the community of Serb municipalities. So this sounds like good news, but will it work? Is this actually a permanent solution to the Serbia-Kosovo issue? Well, so far things don't look great. While both leaders apparently agreed to it, neither has actually signed it, and it went down pretty badly with the Serbian public, especially its more nationalist elements, who took to the streets to protest it. Nationalist Serbs complained that the agreement basically requires them to give up on the license plates issue and implicitly recognise Kosovo, and all they get in return is something that Kosovo had already agreed to back in 2013. Some of them are also angry at what they see as a U-turn from their president, Aleksandar Vučić, who has always said that he would never recognise Kosovo's statehood. Vučić's U-turn here is probably something to do with his EU aspirations. Serbia applied to join the EU back in 2009, and it's now by far and away Serbia's largest trading partner and donor, dishing out hundreds of millions of euros in EU funding every year. Serbia's relations with much of the EU have been strained by Serbia's timid response to Putin's invasion of Ukraine, and Vučić probably realised that he had to sign up to the agreement if he wanted to keep Serbia's EU dreams alive. However, after the protests, Vučić immediately distanced himself from the agreement, insisting that he never agreed with it and he wouldn't sign it in its current form. Similarly, while Kosovo Prime Minister Albin Kurti currently sounds more optimistic about it than Vučić, whether he actually signs it will probably depend on how the Kosovo public and political class react to the creation of the Association of Serb Municipalities, as seems to be implied by the agreement. Nonetheless, even if this agreement doesn't end up entirely resolving the issue, it's still a step in the right direction. After all, it was only last year that we were talking about the possibility of a Serbian intervention in Kosovo. So even if tensions remain, the direction of travel looks positive. We don't yet know how this is going to resolve, but we do know that it will continue progressing, and fast. With the rise of complex geopolitical situations, semiconductor politics and AI tools, things are moving fast right now. AI isn't the future, it's here right now. And to be part of the next tech revolution, you need to understand the core concepts behind things like AI, neural networks, and machine learning. And the best place to learn them is Brilliant.org. Brilliant.org is the best way to learn maths and computer science interactively. Brilliant has thousands of lessons, from foundational and advanced maths to AI, data science, neural networks, and more, with new lessons added monthly. It's not just complex AI and computer science stuff. Anyone can improve their skills and make themselves more employable by running through courses on things like data analysis and statistics, so you can better understand what's happening in the rapidly changing world around you. And you can do all of that without all that much effort, by taking courses each and every day to keep yourself on top of everything. To try everything Brilliant has to offer, free for a full 30 days, click on the link in the description. The first 200 of you will get 20% off Brilliant's annual premium subscription.